Hello everyone, welcome back to My Hero Academia Podfics. Today I'm going to be continuing with the Coffee Shop Hero. This will be Chapter 9, Part 9, entitled The Coffee Shop Hero Goes to War. Previously. And this is the adopted one, the child that you said could rewind someone's internal clock. An amused voice chuckled, staring at the tiny, crying girl through the monitor of his computer. Yes, and she's the key to ridding the world of diseases known as quirks, another younger voice griped. Careful. I may have gotten you out of prison, but I can just as easily rip you limb from limb. Do not insult me again. All might is our target. And then I get the girl, the younger prompted. Yes, you can have her so long as she does what I need, and I get her quirk later. While I may not want it in my body personally, there are other pawns that I could force it on. How long, then? Patience, Chisaki. I've waited 200 years. You can wait a few days. By then I'll have completed my final goal. And after that, All for One will be unstoppable. When Nezu received word that his analysis sister was kidnapped, he had just started his 5th cup of tea while reading through the meeting notes once more. Before that phone call arrived, it had been his favorite brew. Over the past several weeks, he and the ever-polite Izuku had narrowed down the League's motives, their member lists, and came to the conclusion that their targets will hold up somewhere between the Hosu and Kamino wards area. Though nothing they had would narrow down further, so that was much to Nezu's chagrin. Nezu had been quite impressed, if not slightly uneasy, with how intelligent his temporary employee was. Izuku Midoriya glanced at him nervously. Dim lights of the long-closed cafe made his eyes pierce the room even more than usual. Nezu suppressed a shiver of excitement and foreboding. I have some information, Izuku blurted out suddenly, producing a 6-inch thick file folder, sliding it over to the principal. Nezu blinked. That is impressive, Midoriya-san. I was under the impression that we'd be doing a brainstorm session tonight. This caused the green-haired teen to blush sheepishly. Yes, well, I just had a thought. UA captured over 100 villains at the USJ incident, and at first glance they appear to have been recruited from across northern Japan with no real pattern. That's right, Nezu supplied, already beginning to open the file folder. However, Izuku got an excited gleam in his eye. Take out the outliers and you get a belt-shaped area of recruitment most heavily near Kamino and Hosu. But that's not possible. There are 2 other belt-shaped areas in the district to the north, and one just blocks from UA. The mouse, like being pointed this out, and Izuku smirked at him. Oh, those weren't the main recruitment spots. Based on the timeline of when each group was inducted, the first group, we'll call it the Kamino Hosu group, was inducted first, 3 weeks before the raid. These are comprised of villains that suit Shigaraki's style more, brutal, bloodthirsty, without a cause, and seem to be the most reluctant to say anything besides when they were supposed to be approached about the job. The second area, the one to the north, is larger, if only just, and has less bloodthirsty villains. These guys all said during their interrogation that they met with Kurogiri or Shigaraki about a week before the attack. And it was done on their turf. Shigaraki didn't have them meet in one spot, nor did he inspire trust in them, as they were just told that they'd get money. Izuku paused for breath, and Nezu took the opportunity to respond. Perhaps Shigaraki didn't even want to let those in the second area to congregate in his main base, and the first group wouldn't have talked either way, as none of them were considered for plea bargains. All from Kamino Hosu were on the run or suspected of murder, rape, or other hard crimes. True, except that's the point. They were all criminals unable to be out in the open, but with only us able to confirm their supposed links to the area using scattered police sightings. They had protection, longer than those 3 weeks too, and were the more adept bunch. Now the third group, we both know they were recruited the day of the USJ, and thus there's no way that they could be where his base is. Not true, he could be hiding under the radar, Nezu chided, knowing they weren't, but at this point he was testing his analyst's abilities. Izuku snorted at this. Yeah, right, Nezu-san. There are now sensors to detect a warp gate within a quarter mile of UA, and there's far too many heroes watchers that make keeping a base unrealistic nearby. Of course, we will roll with your theory on it being somewhere in Kamino or Hosu, but that still leaves 20 square miles of city to narrow down. But 20 miles is barely anything, what, when you have every traffic camera on your side, Izuku grinned evilly. Nezu cackled, spilling his tea. I knew there was a reason I liked you, Midoriya-san. I believe between the pair of us that the League of Villains stands no chance. Indeed, Nezu-san. Now let's talk about quirks. Here Izuku pulled out a file labeled Kurogiri. A flash of pain went through his eyes. Midoriya-san? Nezu raised an eyebrow. No, it's nothing. Anyways, did you know that there's a formula for Kurogiri's quirk? And Arie, back to bed, please. He called out suddenly to the stairs. A quiet squeak muttered, How did he do that? Was accented by feet running back up to their warm bed. The adults shared a chuckle and resumed to their work in gusto. Those weeks of working out the kinks of their search and dissecting their enemies were among the most enjoyable in Nezu's career. It was rare to find anyone so dedicated, polite, and genuine as Izuku Midoriya. He was a real gem. So when the call came in that the teen was at the hospital being healed, and that Arie Midoriya was taken by the monsters they were tracking, Nezu's blood boiled. With zero regard for decorum, he ran out of the door, intent on being involved in the case. He promised himself that every UA hero, and any others he could round up, would do their best to bring the little girl home, if not for her sake, then for Izuku's. And his 5th cup of tea, once his most favorite brew, why, Nezu doubted he'd ever be able to stomach the filth again. It tasted like ash. When Bakugo got the word about his precious little pipsqueak being kidnapped, he had been trying on new shoes, courtesy of his new guardian. Midnight Sensei, Kayama-san, she insisted, was Izuku's idea, and Bakugo would never admit that he liked having her for a foster mom. The crazy lady was stupid and kept trying to make him blush, which he never did, but she wasn't mean, and she worked with him on his quirk. Not to mention his shoes, they were built for his quirk specifically, in case he needed to use it while out of his uniform. Izuku, he reminded himself, had pointed out that his feet could use his explosions as well, and Midnight Sensei wanted him prepared, able to slide the soles back with a push of a button. They wouldn't be ruined like his last 3 pairs of shoes, and he didn't have to file for permission to take his combat pair for his hero costume off of school grounds. So everything was going perfectly, until Midnight's phone rang. Yeah? What? Shota, calm down and explain. Long curses from his lazy sensei followed. Though Bakugo couldn't hear, he ignored them, looking at the pair of unicorn boots for Arie, thinking of how he could make Shitty Hair go along and say that he bought them for her, since there was no way in hell Bakugo would give the brat a gift. None at all. Katsuki. Midnight's voice, filled with tears, jerked his attention back to the conversation. She looked broken. Yeah, Hag? He gulped. She ignored it, meaning it was serious. Shit. It's Arie. What of the brat? He tried to play it off as nothing, even as he let out a spark and dropped the boots. She's gone, Katsuki. And that's when Bakugo's world stopped, much like Izuku's. When Arie's kidnapping reached the coffee shop, and where Hitoshi was just serving up some mint tea to the grumpy Tanaka while the old man complained about his clothing shop being underappreciated, Kirishima, meanwhile, tried his best to help Ida in the kitchen, but the pair was hopeless at it, and Hitoshi feared what his boss would think. You're just a snot-nosed brat, so you wouldn't understand, but nobody appreciates the finer seams in pants. Isn't that right, boy? Tanaka barked. His assistant, a timid man named Ray, honestly, Hitoshi didn't care enough to remember, bobbed his head with vigor. Yes, sir. Hitoshi rolled his eyes as he returned to the counter. A regular came in, looking jittery, like a squirrel. Hitoshi dreaded this guy's order. Welcome to Midoriya's. What can I get you today? The purpleette droned, already bracing for the answer. 10 shots of espresso on the dot. Yeah. The man, a 20-something-year-old engineering student, had the audacity to order espresso, and only espresso, not even coffee or milk, every afternoon. Boss seemed indulgent and would smile, but Hitoshi refused. The guy was shifty, as anyone who had that much espresso and still lived was not to be trusted. However, he fulfilled the order and watched the guy literally buzz while stumbling out of the shop. Taking a minute to get over the sacrilege of the afternoon, Hitoshi winced at the loud bang emanating behind him. His 2 underlings for the day, there's no way Boss would let anyone but him be in charge, right? Bolted out of the kitchen with somehow edible cookies. Shinzo-kun, we have endeavored our hearts to make sweets that align with the establishment standards. Ah, that was Ida. Maybe Hitoshi could just ignore him. But no, he had a job to do. Ida, stop shouting. You know Boss hates it. And Kirishima, why is your hair white? Hitoshi drawled. The pair grinned and moved to respond when one of the regulars gasped and dropped her coffee. Hitoshi whipped his head around, and the customer, a woman known for not showing emotion, was openly crying while looking down at her computer screen. Curious, Hitoshi stalked over, intent on cleaning up the mess and finding what made the usually emotionless woman cry. When he saw the news feed with a picture of Arie Midoriya smiling, his stomach clenched, and when he read the caption describing her kidnapping, well, Hitoshi saw red. But that's okay, as he was sure the entire shop was willing to help him get away with murder, based on their expressions. No mercy for these scumbags, after all. Shota Aizawa was having a good day, in that he was napping in his apartment with the AC blasting. No brats were waking him up to teach him anything, seeing as it was summer. Cats surrounded him, both in dreamland and reality, and the Erasure Hero felt as if nothing could spoil it. So when Izuku's panic button went off on his phone, Shota felt dread. A filthy bile, ominous and foreboding, settled in his throat. Activating the location, he darted to where his kids were, alerting the heroes and cops in the area on the way. Within 20 minutes, he had landed in a park surrounded by police. What he saw broke his Sone expression. Izuku, staring at the sky, listless, clutching a rib while bones protrude out of his one leg. Crime tape was being erected around the park's perimeter, though the paramedic attempting to talk to Izuku was looking worried at the lack of response from him. "Problem child," he breathed. No response. "Izuku," Shota said sharply, hoping to snap the teen back to reality. It worked, as poison green eyes darted over to meet his. Tears instantly started pooling. "Aizawa-san, they took her. They stole my sister." Gut-wrenching sobs escaped, and on instinct, Aizawa knelt down and gently hugged the teen, his own shock taking over. "Shh, it's going to be okay. We'll find her. We'll find Arie." He stumbled over the little girl's name, the name of someone who made everyone's lives better with just a smile. The underground hero crushed the urge to spiral into despair. He had to be strong for his kids. I need you to tell me who attacked you." Izuku lifted his eyes once more and spat with venom. "It was the League of Villains. The bastards who stole my Arie, it was them." And Shota Aizawa felt 10 years older at that. The one group of villains that managed to elude them, who amassed an army with monsters capable of taking All Might. Those were the monsters that he had to take down. So much for a peaceful weekend before summer camp. Izuku felt his awareness click in the moment that Recovery Girl kissed his injuries away and absently stuffed 5 gummies in his mouth. He furiously wiped away his tears, mind racing with the facts of what happened. "Sorry for being out of it. Thank you for coming to the hospital, Recovery Girl," he said politely. She gave him a sad smile and pat on the head. "No thanks needed, dearie. You and Arie have done wonders for us at all. It's the least that I can do since—" She trailed off, only to shake her head in anger at the situation. "Anyways, Aizawa-san should be back in a few minutes. Rest up until then." "No, I'm fine. I need to get Nezu. We don't have much time. Arie—" "I'm already here, Midoriya-san." Nezu popped in the doorway, effectively stopping Izuku's frantic ramblings. "Nezu-san," he looked relieved. "It was Kurogiri and Shigaraki. They took Arie." Here Izuku hesitated. He knew he needed to explain some things about how and why the League wanted an innocent 6-year-old child, but Recovery Girl was in the room. "Yes, and I bet we need a private talk about this." Nezu gave a meaningful look to the healer. With a huff and warnings to rest, the woman left, clicking the door shut behind her. "Now, something tells me that you have an idea about why Arie was taken, something to do with her miraculous birth between your parents across continents?" "It's her quirk, you see." "Oh, what's so special about little Arie-chan's quirk? It's a unicorn mutation, I believe." Here Nezu was intrigued, despite the circumstances. "It's not a unicorn mutation. Her quirk, it can turn back any living organism's internal clocks. It's so powerful that she could turn someone back to not having a quirk, or even erase them from existence. That's what happened to her father before her mother sold her to the Yakuza for a price of a plane ticket out of the country." Fist clenched, Izuku reflected on the scumbags who used his precious little one for months before he spotted her on that fateful shopping trip. "I happened to see her a couple of years ago, filthy and in a hospital gown. Without thinking, I ran with her home, and my mother helped cover up her past." "And the Yakuza group?" the rodent asked, while ignoring how the supposed shop owner had connections to pull off an identity switch. Dekuru had many connections, but a fake ID making didn't seem to be one of them. "I manipulated their assets, and all of their arrests. The 8 precepts of death were my first large project, actually." And Nezu's fur paled to translucent, face slacking. "Nezu-san?" "We were just going to cover it up, the Hero Commission, that is, until I had a chance to discuss the breakout with you and make a plan to stop public panic, but 16 hours ago, an unknown warp gate broke into the prison that Kai Chisaki was being held in and aided his escape." Izuku sucked in a breath. This changed everything. "Shit," he uncharacteristically cursed. "What am I supposed to do? First the League, and now a Yakuza madman who destroys anything with barely a touch? We will do all that we can, and we will find her. That I promise you." The green-eyed teen buried his face in his hands, and Nezu got up to make a phone call. He had no leads. The kidnappers threw their bracelet at him, meaning no tracking. It was as if the world swallowed all his hope. Reaching down to his pocket, he pulled out the tracking bracelet, smiling a watery grin at the unicorn sticker that Arie insisted on sticking to the band. There was a scratch on the glass from her dropping it on the sink, not to mention the cute little micro SD card taped to the back. Wait, micro SD card? What in the— Izuku murmured, and then it hit him. Kurogiri. The sly villain had given him something. What it was, Izuku could only guess. Problem child, are you all right? Aizawa's voice broke Izuku's hyper-focus. An even wider grin, this time of hope, stretched across his face as he met his favorite customer's eyes. Arie's bracelet, the man observed. No, hope. It seems Shosan isn't a complete traitor to my mother after all. Aizawa just stared, completely puzzled, as his kid pulled a laptop from thin air and started typing away like the hounds of hell were upon him. Oh, you little shit, you think having this week of an encryption key on your card would keep me out? My, so overconfident. Izuku chuckled darkly, making the underground hero remember that while his kid was generally a pacifist coffee shop owner, he was also a demon, and demons knew no rules when it came to getting back what they wanted. Cracking into the data proved easy, tedious, but easy considering everything his mother taught him. The 600-character coded message, easy as kindergarten mud pies. Following said message to the live security footage of Arie getting smacked by Chisaki Kai, hardest thing he'd ever had to witness. Her room, dingy and dim, reminded him of the nightmares she used to describe while screaming, flashbacks consuming her before he or his mother would calm her. Even 2 years later, Izuku would find the little sunshine crawling into his bed with whimpers of past horrors. He kept watching the footage, eyes taking in every aspect of the room. As Kurogiri appeared and started telling off Chisaki, his eyes widened when the Mist villain dropped a bag of bleeding burgers in front of Arie. There was only one bleeding burgers shop. Can we track this? Izuku could hear Aizawa demand from Nezu, who was already at his own laptop while making calls. Neither had seen the scene. When Izuku looked back, Kurogiri and the bag were gone. He heard something about it, taking 20 hours to unscramble the location, that they would need to get the better computers at UA, that so-called experts would be able to do it. But Izuku could care less about that. His eyes were focused on the information Kurogiri had either intentionally or unintentionally given out. And Izuku desperately hoped it was the former, since a small part of him wished that Kurogiri that he saw was the one that his mother had loved. His mind worked through the algorithm of where Kurogiri could be based on the bag. Bleeding Burgers had one single location, with excellent food, and it was at Kamino. What will you do when you have the location? Izuku asked quietly, checking his ribs to make sure that they were completely healed. One of the officers heard him as Aizawa was still busy. Don't worry, kid, we'll find out where the tyke is and launch an investigation. Kidnapping cases like these, we take them slow, since the villains want them alive. We go careful, so she doesn't get hurt. She isn't in any immediate danger. But she's already been hurt. We need to get her home immediately, Izuku argued. Whoa, stop worrying, kid. You'll have her back by the end of the week at the latest. We just don't want to rush things and waste the heroes' lives. Yamamoto, shut up, the lead investigator barked, not having heard the stupid and rather false observation by the rookie. That Arie kid has ties to Aizawa, and when that man had someone taken from him, the police were quick to get that person back. The man was the best hero they had for underground work, and angering him due to bureaucratic red tape was not in the investigator's best interests. The investigator, a portly man in his 40s with an intelligent quirk, dragged the rookie to another room to get updates from Aizawa, who was verbally grilling the police chief for immediate permission to do whatever was necessary to get Arie home today. But Izuku didn't know this. His world was crumbling, and rational thought was few and far between, so with grace, bought with years of being a coffee shop owner, he left the room silently. After checking out at the desk and stopping home for what he needed, without alerting the mass of worried customers and workers, Izuku disappeared into the wind, his phone left on his desk with a note. I refuse to lose another member of my family. Dakiru. Kurogiri looked at Overhaul, feeling disgust twist in his gut. He was a monster, even more so than Kurogiri himself, and he was helping him and the League break into UA. He could only hope that Izuku was in the process of saving Arie before Sensei's plan to lure All Might could work, because if Sensei was successful, all hope would be lost for Kurogiri's soul. Nezu growled as they tried to decode the location, the algorithm proving tedious. His teachers, save the on-patrol All Might, sat in their spots around the staff room, each working non-stop. Bakugo, I need you to fax this, Midnight called to their most passionate student. The boy was insisting on helping all the while, clutching some sort of cutesy trinket to his chest. Thankfully, he was willing to do the tedious tasks that slowed down their work. So caught up in the bickering and planning and frantic grunts from Aizawa, asking where his problem child was, Nezu didn't notice the shift in security. Not until the walls started to disintegrate before his very eyes. The grinning face of Chisaki Kai met his horror-struck own. This concludes Chapter 9 of The Coffee Shop Hero. I'll be back with the final chapter, which will be Chapter 10, as soon as possible. Hope you guys are still enjoying this fic as we're about to wrap it up. And as always, thank you so much for listening.